begin by inviting Anton Groenewald to come up and say a few words of welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm going to use this ordinary speech. I'm standing for Gareth Blow, who is at the mining in Durban. And as I say that, I realize the juxtaposition where we're doing responsible tourism, and we have 7,000 delegates, probably one of the most, shall we call it, challenging industries when it comes to any level of responsibility. So I was thinking that perhaps the success of responsible tourism is when we make it responsible mining in Durban, and I'm not quite sure that that's going to be possible in our time. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Responsible tourism, in my estimation, is nothing other than just really good business practice. It places the issue of sustainability in every sense of the word at the center of the ethos of our business. In this case, primarily tourism businesses. I recently experienced firsthand what this means when sustainability is placed at the center of the design ethos of a business in its creation and its establishment. And in this case, I'm referring to Hotel Verde. I was absolutely astounded by the level of minutiae in the detail to which they went in the conceptualization, design, and implementation of the hotel. And I want to use this opportunity to once again congratulate Mario Delicio, I hope I pronounced it correctly, and Samantha Annandale for an incredible job that they're doing at the Hotel Verde. And I also experienced what it means for that sustainability ethos to be retrofitted into an established world-class facility as it adopts and adapts its operation using technology to achieve the sustainability targets that it has set itself. And in this regard, I wish to also once again congratulate David Green and Colin Devenish from the V&A Waterfront for taking an established facility and adopting sustainability as an ethos and then retrofitting because they could not redesign the waterfront from the outset. In both cases, in both of these instances, the economic and financial benefits have matched, if not exceeded, the environmental and ecological benefits. It, as a concept, delivers proverbially and actually on the triple bottom line. But responsible tourism is responsible business, and it in effect is a concept that I think that is applicable in as many other sectors as it is in tourism. All organizations, to some extent or other, consume water, electricity, create waste, have the opportunity to recycle, reuse, or it can choose not to do so. I wish to pause for a moment and acknowledge Alderman Dimitri Kwali from our portfolio committee. Thank you very much, Dimitri, for joining us. But responsible tourism, sorry if I could just start in, but responsible tourism is responsible business, and it is in fact a concept that is applicable to as many other sectors as at least the tourism sector. All organizations consume water and electricity, create waste, have the opportunity to recycle, reuse, or it can choose not to. How do we see this year in the upcoming International Responsible Tourism Conference to help extend the successes in tourism and then make the shift or the jump to other sectors? How do we translate this ethos across more than just the tourism sector? 2015 is the 7th year for Responsible Tourism Week in Cape Town. And it's an annual observance. I'm extremely impressed that we have Ron made a live streaming in from Mexico. I thought it was based in Las Vegas, it was based on my research, but Mexico was just as well. I'm at the moment closely tracking how Cape Town performs in regard to this initiative and whether or not it needs to reposition itself or it needs to be enhanced or juxtaposed with another position other than just the responsible tourism position. In this 7th year, we would like to believe that we've crossed the chasm from awareness and that we are in showcasing achievements so that we can demonstrate the collective benefits to the city for not just a sustainable city, but also for future generations. We're here today hosted by Two Oceans Aquarium. I'd like to thank, is there anybody from the Two Oceans Aquarium present? I'd like to extend thanks to them in their absence. This is the 2014 Virgin Holidays Responsible Tourism Awards Best Destination category winner. And I believe they will also share that accolade with us this afternoon. Apart from our host today, Hotel Verde also brought home the Best Hotel Award, which I've made reference to. We had the pleasure of being hosted by both award winners this past Friday, including the Waterfront, as well as Hotel Verde. In the Portfolio Committee for Tourism, Events and Economic Development, we're impressed and at times we're in awe at the extent of the interventions and what a phenomenal contribution that these two facilities are making to helping position Cape Town as a responsible tourism destination. Peninsula All Suites Hotel is also a winner of the Cape Town Energy Efficiency Forum Award. It's implemented a range of interventions that have resulted in substantial reductions in energy consumption. Every part of the building, from the kitchen to the laundry to guest rooms and restaurants, was targeted in these efforts, with members of staff as well as guests being educated to continually increase awareness and enhance energy efficient practices. The Africa Responsible Tourism Awards, to be hosted right here in Cape Town in April as part of World Travel Market Africa and the International Responsible Tourism in Destinations Conference, is another opportunity for recognition of the best performers in the country and continent. It is my sincere hope that many more companies will consider making submissions to demonstrate the changes that they have made, so that we can create a much larger coalition of willing to demonstrate that this is possible to be mainstream in all of the sectors in our city. Another major component of our responsible tourism approach is access, and particularly universal access, which forms the next area of focus for the city to promote its tourism development framework. Currently, the National Department of Tourism's Universal Access and Tourism Framework is being piloted in Cape Town and Durban. I have, on at least 2 other occasions, made a commitment, and I'd like to ensure that all the assets in my own portfolio, Cape Town Stadium, Athlone Stadium, City Hall, and the Grand Parade, as well as Good Hope Centre, that these are accessible in the truest sense of the word. Obviously, in my case, it's capital budget allocation is notwithstanding, something Colin can relate to. It's easy to talk the talk, it's having the resources to match that. And so I also acknowledge another councillor who's joined us, Councillor Jansen. Universal access forms at present a major part in the city in all of its infrastructure delivery with its assets, and primarily the single biggest deliverable of that universal access is the My City services and its infrastructure, in which universal access is a central design component. This includes interchanges and so forth. World Wetlands Day on the 2nd of February was a successful day in that the City of Cape Town was handed the Ramsar certificate for False Bay Nature Reserve. And this was an acknowledgement of the intergovernmental collaboration between the 3 spheres of government, the city, the province, and the national department. This week ahead in the upcoming International Responsible Tourism Conference gives us an opportunity to showcase our successes, reflect on our failures, and to chart a new course for the next while as we try to focus our efforts and energies in making the transition from tourism businesses to all businesses. With this redirection and focus, I hope I can rely on all of you to work with the city to create more converts, more ambassadors, and in other sectors, so that the multiplier effect can be so much greater than it is at present. I wish to thank Nomborelo Mkefa and the Tourism Department, our partners at Cape Town Tourism who are present here today, our international gold standard winners, and all those who have chosen to embrace this way of doing business. It is our collective responsibility to be responsible tourism advocates. I thank you.
Thank you, Linton. Under his watch, we have a brand new arts and culture policy framework, which has recently come out. It's one of the most progressive policy documents that we've seen in a long time. Thank you. And Cape Town really has been at the forefront of responsible tourism. So we're in a good place here at the foot of the universe. Our next speaker is Jason Drew, who in 2008 decided that he was done with the Industrial Revolution and decided that now it was time for the sustainability revolution. And I'm sure he'd be very happy if the mining companies were shut down and all of their electricity needs were diverted to other causes, such as the agribusiness and agri-protein. Jason has been involved in an incredible number of businesses. I was researching a bunch of them recently. Solar, different ways of retreading wheels, tires, so that you could use them for much longer. Property, energy, it spans the ambit of everything to do with how we sustain ourselves on this planet. And now we have 30 minutes of input from him. So I'd like to ask you to put your hands together for Jason Drew.
industrial revolution is over and the sustainability revolution has begun. How we manage this transition will define the outcome of the 21st century for all of you in this room, and in fact, everybody on our planet. It's this understanding that the world is beginning to change, that is driving people to think differently. It's what's driving the interest around sustainable tourism. But more than anything else, what is really troubling most of us is that we are all, in one form or another, in business. And the world of business looks very different. In the past, business was always an extension, to some extent, of the past. The future was a predictable outcome or vaguely predictable outcome. The problem is today, the future looks very, very broken. Why? Because we're in the middle of this transition. If you think back to standing in the beginning of the Industrial Revolution and the massive changes that were reached on the economy and lives and everything else, we are at that tipping point now in businesses we all exist and work for. I grew up in the Industrial Revolution. All the businesses I started in the last 25 years were based around the two core principles of the Industrial Revolution: extract, manufacture, throw away, and multi-generational product development. That's how you made money. So the iPhone 4 was on the drawing board before the iPhone 1 hit the shops. Why? Because that's how you thought you made money, by selling endlessly, extract, manufacture, throw away into the Industrial Revolution thinking. It's all now changed. There are 5 key drivers for me of the sustainability revolution. They are repairability, upgradability, shareability, durability, and most of all, closability. I'll just give you some examples of what I mean about that. So I'm working with a large washing machine manufacturer in Europe. So their design life of their machine is 4.69 years. That's how long they want your washing machine to last. Then you throw it away, then you buy another one. The new generation of machine that's coming out in a few months' time from Dyson, you know Dyson make the Hoovers and everything else, has a design life of the carcass of 30 years. There's only 4 things that ever go wrong with your washing machine, and you'll know them all. It's the belt that connects the motor to the drum. It's the motor itself. It's the seal around the door, and it's the sliding thing where you put the powder in. That's what breaks. So in this revolution, applying my 5 tests, Dyson come up with a radical new concept. The front of the machine and the carcass will last for 30 years. Not very difficult. When your belt breaks that connects your motor to your drum, you turn a handle, you slide it out, you disengage it. You write your email address on it, and you stick it in the post box. A day or so later, you get an email with a bill for £29 or whatever it is. They send you one when you pay it. You plug it in, you close it, slide the machine back, and you've repaired your own machine. How to make money doing this? Well, there's 2 ways of doing it. There's only 4 things that are going to go wrong. So over the next 30 years, they will market to you those self-repairing activities that you can do. They will make money by selling you those components, not by competing every 4.5 years with AEG or Samsung or somebody else to sell you a new machine and all the environmental hassle that that delivers. Upgradability. You'll be able to upgrade the machines with new softwares. You can upgrade all sorts of things with new software. So the new iPhones that come out in time to come will have a carcass nice design for 10 or 15 years. Because your screen normally doesn't go wrong unless you drop it. What you want is the new software, the new functionality, the new look. Why can't you just buy the bits that make that happen? And so companies are redesigning their models to think about that. So that's where we get to repairability and upgradability. And every industry that I'm involved with has 2 of those elements at least in its thinking. Instead of extract, manufacture, throw away, it's repairability and upgradability. Now talk about shareability. If I'd been standing here 15 years ago and said 100 million of the richest people on the planet will be sharing bicycles within 10 years, you'd say, no, it's never going to happen. But you cannot go to a major city without a bike sharing scheme booming and expanding and working brilliantly. There's 100 million of the wealthiest people on the planet sharing bicycles. You'd have thought that was impossible 10 years ago. Now it's a reality and you haven't even noticed it. And that is the pace at which things are changing. Repairability, upgradability, shareability. Let's talk about durability. Durability fitting with the extract, manufacture, throw away. You take a Black & Decker drill to drill holes with. It is used on average for 15 minutes in its entire life. After that 15 minutes, people then spend money storing it. Self-storage units at the end of the garage they never use, or gathering dust. What people actually want is they want a hole, they don't want a drill. Now, in the new world of sharing, where we share bicycles, and enabled by iPhones and everything else, People are beginning to share those. In London, people in the street share a drill. Why would you store one you're only going to use for 15 minutes? Right, just share it. We share hotels, we share sheets, we share pillows, we share baths. We just call them hotels. It's just getting your mind around that the world has changed and technology has enabled it. So out of that comes a notion of durability. Black & Decker is failing endlessly because people who buy things to share, to lend people a machine to make a hole, want a machine that's going to last and is durable. So the old model of manufacturing the Black & Decker is replacing it with Akita and those type of guys whose drills last a long time, fit for the world of sharing. So extract, manufacture, throw away, repairability, durability, upgradability, and sharing. But the most important of all of those is closing loops. And I'll talk to you about a couple of examples in a minute about closing loops. In my travels around the world, in my sort of transition from being a capitalist to an environmentalist, I sort of got stuck at one point because I really am a businessman. I've created lots of businesses in my life, and I really am an environmentalist. And during the Industrial Revolution, you have to be schizophrenic to be both. And I understood that during the sustainability revolution, if you are not both, you will fail in your aims. If you're a business person who doesn't understand the environment, you will fail. If you're an environmentalist with environmental cause who does not understand business, you will fail. You have to be both. Therefore, I call myself today an environmental capitalist. I'm not in business to get a salary, I'm in business to make a business, grow a business, sell it as a business. That's what I've done for the last 30 years. But now I can do both and be happy. On my travels around the world, though, of all the challenges that I think we face, the largest challenge on the planet for me is how on earth are we going to feed 9 billion people? Never the current existence that exist. So if we're to avoid the social decay, the social collapses that the food price inflation causes through lack of food, lack of supply, we have to do things differently. And it came to me that there were a number of great business opportunities to challenge the status quo that people just couldn't see because they were too mired. I got happily thrown out of school at a young age, or several times, so it wasn't constrained by the Industrial Revolution thinking that is driven into all of us. And so I'm standing in a cow shed in Saudi Arabia with 40,000 cows in air-conditioned shed, surrounded by green fields. I thought, this is just never going to last. I spoke to the guys, and yes, they were feeding the grass from an aquifer outside, and of course the aquifer was going to dry up. It did, and that place is closed. But I talked to them about their second most important foodstuff in Saudi, which is beef, and of course after that it's chicken. And they said, well, we get 1 million chickens a month from a town called Worcester, which many of you here will know is just up the M1. That's only 30 kilometres from my farm in Tulbach. And so I went to go find it. I went to see this chicken shed, which I'd never seen because I'd never looked. And I ended up at the back of a chicken sheds and then the slaughterhouses, and there's a whole pool of blood surrounded by flies buzzing. But they just throw the blood from the slaughtering into the ground. So 250,000 chickens is 250,000 litres of blood a week, which is 10 petrol tankers full of blood, just with nothing to do with it. And I'd come and I'd seen the collapse of fishing on the Grand Banks, I'd seen the collapse of the Sea of Galilee, but I remembered when I was a kid at home in the north of Yorkshire, my grandparents had a stream running in front of them. There was only 2 ways to catch a fish. One was to tie a fly onto the end of the line and cast it onto the water. The other was to go into the field, find a horse dung, break it open and find a little wriggly maggot. Put that in the hook and drop it in the water. That's what fish have always eaten. And when I think about it, chickens, when they're scratching the field, aren't looking for fish, but that's what they're fed. They're fed fish meal. They're looking for worms and ants and larvae, things like that. If chickens were meant to be eating fish, they'd be called seagulls. Yet 1/3 of all the fish we take out of our seas every single year is ground up to make fish meal to feed to chickens and fish in our industrial agricultural systems. So I then thought, this is interesting. They like the blood and guts and the waste, and they like animal poo, as flies do. So we set about 6 or 7 years ago researching and understanding the flies. I could talk for days about flies. How Genghis Khan would never go into battle without flies. Why? Because he'd take a covered wagon with him full of rotting meat, he'd take the eggs off the rotting meat of the flies, put them on the wounds of his soldiers. As they hatch, they consume the broken cells. They can't eat a whole cell, they only eat broken cells. And there's only 2 things on that breaking down cell. One is bacteria, and the other is a larvae. So larvae, of course, have the world's most up-to-date antibiotics. Now, Genghis Khan knew this 1,200 years ago, The National Health and Larvae Office today has only discovered it in 2015. But anyway, it takes a long time to learn what we've forgotten. So we went from there to trialing and understanding. We failed endlessly growing larvae because whilst a fly may lay 1,200 eggs, most of them don't hatch. When they do hatch, they get eaten by passing birds or passing chickens. That's just what happens to larvae. That's why we're not needing big flies. Well, some people are, anyway. So we set about creating the process. Through many years of work with Stellenbosch University of Late, we finally have arrived at the point late last year when we knew how to industrialize the process. So we today received our air emissions license, which is the last thing on our list of licenses and approvals, and we have now built, or halfway through building, the world's largest farm. It's the world's largest farm by head count. We have we'll have 8.5 billion flies at the end of Cape Town runway. If you imagine the factory, it's slightly bigger than the flight deck of the carrier USS Nimitz. It's immense. And in that factory, we have rows upon rows upon rows of cages filled with flies. The flies lay their eggs in one particular place. We've taught them to do that. We take 1 kilo of eggs of flies, feed it on waste from the city of Cape Town that would otherwise go to landfill. And that 1 kilo of eggs turns into 380 kilos of protein in about 72 hours. So every single day, we're taking 100 tons of organic waste from the city of Cape Town that would otherwise go to landfill and has no other use and ends up poisoning the ground. We take it to our factory in Philippi. We grow these larvae. Then when the larvae come out, they're about that size and wriggling. We dry them, we squeeze them, we take the oil out, which is a very good omega-rich fatty acid oil. And what is left is 55% protein by volume, because that's just what we are. That's what animals are. To be an animal, you've got to have 55% protein in you. And guess what? It's what chickens have eaten since they were invented. It's what fish have eaten since the first fish ever jumped out of a stream to get a fly. And all we're doing is making unconnected dots, taking waste, connecting it with flies, and developing a system invented by Mother Nature and perfected by us. Last year we won the United Nations Innovation Prize for Africa. At the end of this month, in 2 weeks' time, we have 5 people from 5 other continents, North America, South America, Australia, Asia and Europe, coming to license our technology from here. So by the end of 2016, we'll have our first 7 factories globally. We think there's a market for 1,500 of these factories around the world. What we're doing is we're making a commodity called protein, the price of which hit $2,300 a ton last month, up from an average of $1,600 for the last 5 years. So as more and more of us come onto the planet, we want protein, or we want chickens, we want fish that need to be fed. Instead of raping our seas, we rape the landfills, take out the stuff that shouldn't be there anywhere, and make a profit doing it. So we're closing a loop. There is no way. There's no way in nature. In fact, there's no such thing as waste, there's just stuff in the wrong place. And that's exactly the jobs we've connected with AgriPro to create that business. But then we went on, and one of our capital costs is a cage. Imagine a cage this size full of flies. Now, I'm no farmer, well, I suppose I'm the world's largest farmer now, but I've never seen 12 bulls in the field with 12 cows. So the fly, funnily enough, was the second animal after the human to have its genome mapped. So I went to see the guys at Oxford University who mapped the genome of the fly. And I met them at Heathrow Airport on my sort of travel schedule flitting through the world, and said, look, can you help me? I'm no scientist, failed every exam at school, thrown out. Can you help me understand this genome thing and how it can help my business and how it can make it more sustainable, more profitable so we can build more factories? He said, you don't need genomics, what you need is sort of pheromones. It's a bit like Chanel number 5 for flies. You spray it outside the cage, all the boy cage flies will go towards the Chanel number 5, the girls won't, and then the girls are staying there, and you've got lots of girls, you put some boys back, and therefore you've got more girls, and more eggs out of your capital cost of the cage, and the boys, well, it's goodbye fly.
I've heard similar stories of others that have similar plans. If you look back over your life, what gave you the edge and what made it work for you?
I think just a driven understanding that what I was doing was right, and that when things are right, there's always a way to make them happen. When you commit to do something, you find that the world changes around you, conspires you to help you in ways that you never thought possible before you made that real commitment. And so we really committed to these things. We didn't fiddle with it at the edge of saying, right, houses on the line, everything. We just went for it. And a lot of business is like that. It's just going for it, thinking through a bit, and then going for it like hell. And not giving up. We should have given up so many times. We couldn't make our flies breed in winter. So I went out with my brother, who's always been my business partner. We had far too much to drink. Walked up to Lion's Head, got to the top of Lion's Head at 6 o'clock in the morning. We lay down on the top of the go back and close our research centre. And as only we could do, as we were lying down watching the sun come up, we looked at the flies around us and saw them starting to mate. We then rang up somebody who hadn't been thrown out of school and asked which frequency of light bends first when the sun comes over the horizon. A year and a half later, we've isolated the frequency of light that causes flies to mate all year round. So it's just keeping going.
Any more questions from the floor? Great.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to speak to the executive management team in the city about the way in which you think. I think that our executive director for utilities and for water need to I just would like to expose you to them. It might be painful for you, but hopefully it will unlock something. I've been absolutely gobsmacked by the quality of the thinking and just this experience. And sadly, I have to leave. As much as I'd like to stay, I'm going to deal with a bunch of irresponsible tourism partners. I'm meeting with the minstrels and the mayor at 4 o'clock. Perhaps they should sit here and we should go there. We have a number of challenges, so please excuse me. I would have loved to stay and participate. And thank you very much. Oh, we've got enough representation from the city, so I'm happy. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. All right, now we have what's on your program titled the Responsible Tourism Showcase, where we have 3 speakers. Colin from the Waterfront, Grant from the Big 6 partners, somewhere in there, Constantia, and Leon from Grootbos Nature Reserve. We're going to let each of these people speak, and then we're going to take your 1 or 2 questions. This must mean that you're really enjoying it so much, that you don't have anything to ask at this point because you're so deeply in reflections. That's cool, let's keep it like that. So please quickly welcome to the podium Colin Devenish from the V&A Waterfront. Now, some of you might already know that before the economy of Egypt went south, the waterfront was not the most visited site on the continent. It was in fact Cairo. And since the V&A engineered the collapse of the Egyptian economy, the V&A became the most visited site on the continent, not in terms of footfall. Not necessarily in terms of international visitors, but just on footfall, that's a pretty big task. And so you can imagine, as the single most visited destination on the continent, that's a lot of impact on our environment and on social justice matters. And so Colin is going to address some of these by looking at the ambit of the Waterfront's responsible tourism program, thinking and philosophy. Thank you very much.
If I talk without the mic, can everyone hear?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, because then it just tells me one thing, I can take the mic away all the time. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, I think just to pick up in terms of what Bill said, yes, we look at our business very differently. So how we sort of augmented the Arab Spring to get the most visitors, no, I'll leave that later on. But in terms of responsible tourism, for us, it's really about the whole, you've got to look at it holistically. You'll hear me talk around that a couple of times this afternoon, because it's just around the economic, the social and the environmental impact. They don't run on their own. You've got to do the one to do the other one better. You can try and do them in isolation, but if you're trying to chase profits at some point, it's going to become difficult. You're not going to get all the numbers of people coming through that. So for us, we believe you've got to follow the old approach. So I'll take you through in terms of our experience and what we feel is our journey. A journey through the waterfront, but also a journey through time. I think a journey through the time this is a journey for us that started about 2008, and we long haven't reached our destination. I think by the time we reach our destination, then technology will have changed and we sort of carry on again. So it's a journey for us that's never ending. I suppose it's like a 100-meter sort of athlete. Once you get to, you've beaten the 10 seconds, you say, what's the next hurdle and where do I go from there? So that's a little bit about sort of where we're going to go. So in terms of the waterfront, just imagine, we haven't fired our CEO, but just the CEO at the Waterfront is a bit of an ordinary job. It's also just a business, but it's also a town. We maintain our streets, our stormwater systems, we maintain all the jetties and the keyways. So look at the street lights, everything that goes with it. So what I'm trying to say is, no matter if you're running a town like Hermanus or Langebaan or Stellenbosch, there's no different. So the journey that I'll take you is as you enter the waterfront, how do you go through? So it's no different entering a town or an estate and how you take it from there. Waterfront, yes, roughly 300 acres. Those of you who enjoy sport, you can look at 180 games over here. 19,000 people work here every single day. 1,500 people live here, and in a peak day in December, you will have 180,000 visitors coming through the waterfront. So yes, in terms of various aspects, it's really looking at, if you have to compare different towns, and this is in terms of visitorship or in terms of the economy, which I'll take you through now, it's sort of compared to different cities around the world. We also believe that roughly, in terms of South African towns, we've been sort of around about the 25 and 1 kilometre might be 30, somewhere around there. So it is in terms of a large piece of real estate. In terms of our visitor profile, 24 million visitors come through here annually. 26% is international. Just some people tend to think we're a sort of tourist destination. Far from it. Cape Townians make up 55%. The latest results that we've got is about 56%. And domestic 19%. For us, that's important because if you're not relevant to locals, how can you be relevant to international? So that will always be our driving force is the locals. And it's no different that someone comes and stays with you, they say, where do you want to go, and then you've got to decide. So we've got to be relevant to locals, and that's important for us. Yes, those numbers are right. Over the last 12 years, the waterfront has contributed 260 billion to the South African economy. We forecast in the next 10 years, that should go up by another 30 billion. So the billion is right, it's not million. That has been confirmed by independent economists that have done the survey for us. So just to put you in a picture in terms of the profit and the sort of the finance together with the social and the environmental aspects. And yes, our plan is to maintain it in terms of what you see on your left, not what you see on your right. And 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. We don't close our gates at any point in time. So that's what we've got to do. But the waterfront, yes, we are the #1 tourist destination in Africa. And last year we were very proud to be given the title of Best Destination Worldwide for Responsible Tourism. Now, why is that important for us? I think it showcases not only the waterfront, but it showcases Cape Town, the Western Cape, and South Africa to the world. Was on the world stage. And as a waterfront, we believe we are, our vision for the waterfront is to be the best waterfront in the world. So this is, we do play in that market, and how do we sort of make it? So it's something that's proud. Okay, you might be a little bit confused with this sort of slide because with Eskom, they even no light sometimes. But for us, it's not about sort of getting a light bulb moment. I think those days are gone. I think for us, it's about getting that chandelier moment. Explain to you why. And maybe that chandelier has candles when we have load shedding and lights when we don't have load shedding. But it's really about the holistic approach. You cannot have a light bulb moment and follow one thing. You've got to get everything together. So if you really want to shine bright and do things right, you've got to tackle everything across your business. For example, we have a sustainability committee in our business that every department is compulsory. You will have a member on that committee. And not some clerk because you just think you want to relegate it to someone in your business and you must have. It will be someone that has accountability in terms of that committee. So whether you're legal, finance, operations, you will be represented on that committee. So for us, it's really about holistic. You'll hear me talk a lot about that. It's also, we're member of the Heritage Environmental Rating System, and we do rate, and for us it's important because it's independent. It's not just what we say, they will come and rate us and say, are you right, are you not? It also helps us implement the right policies and procedures and get a little bit of guidance because we don't know everything, but it helps us. Our aim is hopefully in the next year to get platinum, and we're pretty close to that, but hopefully we'll know that quite shortly. So it's really looking at the business holistically, and it's not just about water and electricity. I think that's important. Okay, just a little bit of the tour around is the behind the scenes, so that you can just see, so that you can get into a little bit of detail. I think if you sort of start entering, and this is an example of if you enter any town or your sort of security estate, wherever, it's really look at it as you enter. And we have pedestrian walkways, bridges, we try and get you close to the water, we have dedicated cycling lanes, we have I think over 15 cycling racks around the waterfront. In a lot of our commercial buildings, we started installing shower facilities. So if you cycle to work, you can actually have a shower and then go to work. We have water taxis that operate between the one and only and the CTICC. My city bus route, we have 13 stops on the waterfront and a train station. So we really try and look at it, and what we do also, if you don't have a look at the shore side, we've got a boardwalk that goes along that, and that's part of a 5K running around the waterfront. Okay, going a little bit further into the waterfront, look at the landscaping. We've got a policy now, all of our landscaping will be indigenous going forward. Other than our palm trees, because that's a theme that you see throughout the waterfront, but it's something that we will roll out and we started changing. Now, why indigenous? Sort of less, they need less water, it's easier to maintain, and just if you come to the waterfront now, in spring, you can really see the flowers coming alive. And so there's no difference why we can't do it. I think something also that we changed, we went from spray irrigation to drip irrigation. If you have a look with the southeaster, we will rather water the plants instead of the roads, because that's what tends to happen. So really having a look at it just a little bit different. We used to have 10% drip irrigation on the waterfront, we're now at 70%, and due to 60% less water than spray irrigation. Also, some of the indirect benefits, if you might not know, is it does help with labour, because weeds grow where the water is. So less water, less weeds, less labour. So that's the sort of knock-on effect that you get from that. Okay, going a little bit further into the waterfront is, you will notice not all of our buildings are new. Some of it old, some of it new, and how do we combine that and be sensitive to our historical sort of roots? So it's important that we look at that and try and maintain that across the waterfront. There's an example in terms of our visitor centre, how we try to do that. So we've got 22 historic sites around the waterfront that we try and maintain in different ways. We've got a historical walking route that you go if you don't want to walk on your own. We've got guides that can take you. So it's really just trying to look at it and say, what do we do and how do we maintain the authenticity of the waterfront? Okay, in terms of our sustainability, we proudly green. Not only are we proudly green, we really try and be on the cutting edge of things and the leaders in some areas. So in terms of silo 1, which is the building that you see there, that's the Allen Gray head office. It was the first building in South Africa to get the 6-star rating as built, not as designed, as built. We have 4-star rating on the silo 2, which is the residential building, and we have recently submitted a building rating for Victoria Wharf, the shopping centre, and the BP building, which we are hoping to get 4 stars for on both buildings. We should know within the next sort of month or two. And the commitment is that all new buildings that we bring online will have a minimum of a 4-star rating. Then also, you will notice that we sort of right at the Atlantic, and it's very cold. Water here between 12 and 16 degrees, so why can't we harness this for air conditioning? So what we do in our buildings is, instead of the cooling towers that you see on a lot of the buildings, we use seawater, and we've used it in the marina apartment, we use it inside of
farming community in a city, and that has its own challenges and obviously a history that goes with it. We don't shy away from the fact that we previously, 330 years ago, were probably the pioneers of the slave trade in South Africa. So we give back to that community by offering free accommodation for all staff members. We have a creche on site that looks after the children for no cost to the staff. There's after-school assistance with homework. We have educational day trips. We had a qualified teacher who was born on the farm, who educated herself. We assisted her with education to look after these kids. They all get free water and electricity. We have a Constantia bus. Those of you that live in the southern suburbs might see it beating its way through the traffic in the morning. It's huge because we have 25 families living on the farm with 34 kids that we transport to school every morning. And obviously that bus is also made available for doctor visits, weekly grocery trips, and it's quite weird because, as I say, we're a farming community within a very progressive urban. So seeing the bus take people shopping makes me think we live in Worcester every now and again. We also have a registered doctor now that comes in once a week to see them, and we raise funds in the local community for the Constantia Primary, and I stress, if you all know that area, Constantia Primary is not Constantia Primary. It is a school in serious need of assistance. We fund the salaries for one teacher, and we obviously contribute to it go there, and then we have some serious marathon runners amongst our staff, and that has nothing to do with how hard they work in the vineyard. They're just a fit bunch, and with Constantia being open to the public to come and run there, they've kind of since little kids seen people run and aspired to it. We've got some good athletes, so we fund their athletic achievements. Pre-entry, I see two here on my slide. These slides weren't prepared by me, but I mean, if Roman Island offered to NGOs, political prisoners, you can see it all up there, all the usual. Table Mountain also, how many of you know that, well, you should all know, because Colette and them did their job very well, that if you celebrate your birthday, you can go out to Table Mountain for free. And NGOs and NPOs and community organizations, I'm sure by arrangement, get up the mountain too for free. And then the V&A Waterfront, you don't pay to come in. And those of you that frequent southern suburbs must know that our room is always open for you to come to the dogs.
It's a long way off, but I think in South Africa and in Cape Town, we've come a long way. I mean, 10 years ago, the stuff was all new. We were still signing declarations, and now everyone's actually implementing, which I think is fantastic, and we should give ourselves a pat on the back and a clap for that. Yeah, so some things that I do manage to travel to a lot of places that are sort of best practice in this field, is things like locally sourced crafts. I mean, if you're especially for the more rural tourism products, source crafts from your local village, and tell the stories behind them. I mean, what are the stories? Who are the people who are making them?
And I would encourage you to take a look at the tweets that I made earlier this hour, some certain challenges for you folks. I would love to see some videos. I would love to see some virtual tours of the Two Oceans Aquarium, of the city park, of the weekend market. So, you know, tourism is much more than bums on seats. You know, it's hearts that are engaged. So, you know, we need to see what you folks are doing. So, with that in mind, I'm going to give you a little bit of a history, just a quick look at the full frame wiki page I have. This is the Planeta Wiki, and this is our conference hub. We've held Responsible Travel Week, one second, this is the Cape Town page. We've held Responsible Travel Week now for 7 years. And the idea of this is that we combine online technology with on-the-ground materials. Now, I know you can't read this, so please, you know, don't strain your eyes too much. But this is a direct link to the agenda. And it has the information about today's seminar, as well as tonight's RT Unite meeting in London and the Sustainability Empathy webcast. We're also holding a live Google Hangout in just an hour and a half with Zoltan Kuhn. We're going to talk about Europe's parts. And that's all there on the Planeta Week. So, you know, enjoy it, and I hope it helps you out. Now, again, I'm speaking to you from a screen, so I'm not going to show you another screen. You have other second screens to do that. But we've held Responsible Travel Week now for 7 years. So what have we learned? Well, one is that each year it gets a little bit easier to explain to the old people what a hashtag is. Second, every year the younger people come up with ideas that surprise me. Our friends in Playa del Carmen, south of Cancun in Mexico, are posting short 9-10-second videos online. And they're using these new technologies that, honestly, 10 years ago would have been a $50,000 or $100,000 project. Sorry, I can't convert it to rand. But very expensive. Now it's on your cheapest cell phone. You know, the people in the market, when I lived in Mexico, the people in the market had better cell phones than I had. They're getting cheaper and cheaper, and they all come with Facebook, they all come with Twitter, they all come with these different technologies. So the question in my mind, as a person, again, on the upward side of 50, is how do we work in a multi-generational way. In other words, are we bringing our families, are we bringing our kids to responsible travel? You know, is responsible tourism just what I as an adult do? Is it just what I, as a person who will ask about permaculture or recycling or local provenance? Or is it something I'm going to bring my kids to? And I think what we're seeing online is exactly that response. The kids are participating and they want to be involved with responsible travel. So at the very least, what we can do is work with them and create this collaborative story that really motivates us. You know, it's not just in the classroom, it's not just in an auditorium, it's what we're going to go out and what we're going to do today, tonight, this weekend, and hopefully, you know, it's a responsible travel year. So that's my quick rundown, but you know, if you have any questions, please ask. And Ian, so great to see you wherever you are. You are certainly the inspiration. And many, many thanks to everybody. Hey! And many, many thanks to everybody in the city of Cape Town, Tourism Office, Responsible Cape Town. Again, to me, it's the city that's made the most inspiration, it's made the most progress and inspiration, and again, love working with you folks. So, thank you.
Questions? Other questions for Ron? All right.
I don't know if Ron can hear me, but if you can ask him, what is the biggest trend internationally in terms of responsible tourism?
Did you get that, Ron? What is it?
Two-point answer. One, internationally, I think we all have incredibly divergent interpretations of responsible travel or responsible tourism. What seems to be a very commonplace language in South Africa is simply just not heard of here in the United States and other places. So we'll qualify specifics. We'll talk about visiting a local market, or we'll talk about local development, or we're talking about children's education program. But we're not going to, we often have a resistance to calling it tourism or responsible tourism. Yesterday in our hangout, I talked to this woman who worked with museums. And she said, but it's not tourism. Well, excuse me, but who visits the museum? It's a visitor. So outside of that, the trend that I see that's not labeled responsible tourism has to be marketing. It has to be going out for local food. The people, the market vendors who go to the market are your best ambassadors for local culture, the local cuisine. It is our entrance as visitors into your culture, and locals are critical. If you don't have the locals going to a local market, it just fades. But it is an incredible attraction for visitors.
Embarking on this program as destination managers, we were very, very conscious and humble that the delivery in terms of the program doesn't sit with us. It sits with the private sector. And the pilot that Tim's mentioned was only possible because businesses volunteered to participate in that pilot. And the elements that they chose to focus on were elements that were the challenges that this destination faces: water, landfill sites, energy, social responsibility, and then other issues such as enterprise development and skills development. And it's from those 3 years of working with businesses, when everybody was saying, we don't think this is going to apply. Businesses are not going to want to share. The presentations we heard today is about businesses sharing what they are doing. And they're not only just sharing by saying about this program, they're actually giving numbers, very real numbers. And the value of those numbers is about saying how far this destination has gone. Since 2002, when the Cape Town Declaration was signed here in Cape Town, that now is viewed globally as what people could refer to as a definition of responsible tourism. So I think but the long way in the sense of there are many, many more people on board, and there are many more people who realize that it makes business sense. It's not only it's the right thing to do, but it makes business sense. And as Kim said, I'm the first to acknowledge that yes, we were spurred on by the green economy, imperatives where business are really investing in energy saving and all sorts of technologies to make this possible. But the work begins now. The work begins now. Now that people are aware of the challenges and what needs to be done and seeing the examples out there, it's about telling the story. But it's also about saying, how do we really know we are going to be responsible? And so yes, as a destination, we win the awards, but how do we begin to measure? And seeing all these examples where people are actually beginning to say, we're saving so much water, we're saving so much money, we're saving so much energy, and how that is beginning to change as a destination. So I am really heartened. And so when we host the International Responsible Tourism Conference in April next year, which will overlap with WTO Africa as well, and there will also be the Africa Responsible Tourism Awards. I think that is where this city, you, Cape Town, and its people, and South Africa, will have the opportunity of showcasing what we are doing here in Cape Town. And so I would like to take this opportunity to firstly say thank you to all of you. I know in this industry it's a beautiful day. Many of you are quite busy in your businesses, given the weather, etc. But this is sufficiently important for me to have actually been here, and would like to acknowledge that. I'd like to say thank you very much. And to our speakers, ably guided by Ian, thank you very much, and acknowledging also the tours you do and how you actually cross those sort of railway lines and exposing the experiences to our people that our people can share out there. I also want to say thank you very much to the team that has made this possible. And when I say team, I don't only mean myself, my team, but I want to say team responsible tourism as we listed, because this wouldn't have been possible without your support, without your guidance. It's not an easy road. It's taken a long time to make that breakthrough, to make it worthwhile. So we started out in a small group of people, and today we're hearing these amazing stories. People have been doing things. I remember back then, it was 2006. Just we drove out there with the whole board of Cape Town Routes Unlimited at the time. And today they are sharing that story. So thank you very much to all of you. And so without further ado, I want to say I'm looking forward to working with you, especially towards the international conference. That is when we're going to show the world that since 2009, when Cape Town, this destination, won the Best Destination Award as a city, how much we've done until 2008. Thank you very much.
There is some food and there is some drinks, and the craft beer truck is arriving. Congratulations. Yeah.